Welcome to the Sober Biz Podcast, the show for the bold, the brilliant, and the booze-free. Here we talk about building meaningful booze-free businesses, turning your mess into your message, and showing up even when you feel like an imposter. This is no fluff and no filters, honest conversations for alcohol-free entrepreneurs who want to make an impact. Hello, everybody. Today on the Sober Biz Collective, we're talking to Natasha Delany. She is an incredibly powerful and innovative Indigenous woman in recovery that has started a company called Indigenous Projects and Events and the Diamonds Mastermind. She is a coach. She is so inspiring. I remember getting to know you through an event we were actually doing with Empower to Recover, and just hearing your story, and you were getting your master's degree as well in business, and just really going for it and trying to make like the most incredible life possible. I remember just like seeing pictures of you and your family in your house and be like, damn, girl, that's my vision board. So I'm really excited to have you here today. Do you want to just share a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me. So I'm from Samson Cree Nation. My maiden name is Saddleback. And And I grew up in the foster care system. So I grew up away from my culture, away from my nation. My mom, she struggled with addiction. And most people here in Canada, at least, they now have a really good idea of, what happened in terms of the residential schools. And so my cookam, she was raised in the residential schools. And like being a mother of 5, I just could never imagine, being told, like I've had a similar experience, but just being told that, you're not capable of teaching your child. So we are going to take your children and you're not going to see them, like maybe see them, I don't know, a month out of the whole entire year. And you're not allowed to go visit them. We have to wait for letters, like you can't contact them. Like my babies are just my world, and I'm sure you feel that same way, about your kids and just, and so the shame, the inherent shame that would create for an entire generation of people. And so my mom, she didn't have very much support. So she was raised on the nation, and my kukum just struggled as well. And so without having those supports, she didn't really know how to love me in the way that was needed, but she really wanted that. Like when I got my file, because I applied for 60 Scoop, when I got it and I read that, she was in a domestic violent relationship with my dad and that she gave me up temporarily so that she could try to get her life back together. But again, without those supports, that's very difficult to be able to do. And so when she gave me up, I went into foster care, and I went into a foster home that I was in for a couple years. And then she was murdered. So that I remember thinking, like on the way home from her wake, like, and I was only in grade 1, but I do remember thinking, like, I'm stuck here now, like I'm stuck here, like I can't, there's no other life than this now, right? And the foster home that I lived in, I'm in AA, I've done lots of step work, I've done lots of healing work around this, but my foster mom, she really struggled with unconscious biases. And, unconscious biases is something that I feel super strongly about educating other people on and what that is. And so I do that through my Diamonds Mastermind, and I do that through the work that I do within Indigenous Projects and Events, is really just that our brains are scientifically wired to create shortcuts, right? So that we can make decisions faster, so that we can, like, that's where there's that saying, where focus goes, energy grows, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it's really just to make things easier for ourselves, because if we were to really like focus on everything that's happening in the entire world, like in this moment, even in the realm, our brains would just go like, phew, like, so our brains just do that automatically. And so part of that is that we are influenced and we are conditioned by the things that we watch, by our parents, by, the colonialism, right? Like all of these things we view and perceive and make assumptions of the world about as being true. And one of those things was that Indigenous people are just drunks, they're just addicts, they're just homeless, like, and so that's what I grew up believing. And my foster mom, even though, her intentions were good, I feel like everybody, most of the time, they have these good intentions. Like one of my favorite sayings is that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so she had good intentions, but in the end, like there's these biases that even like she's like nobody likes to be called out and or even question and find out if they're racist or they have, these beliefs about Indigenous people. And she was. And so there was things that she would say and do, and the energy, right? But children are so like divine, right? And we know and we can feel the energy. And so it didn't match a lot of her words. So she would say, well, I'm not racist. I love everybody equally. And, she was really treated and regarded and respected because of her taking in foster kids, Indigenous foster kids. But behind closed doors, things were very different. And so I grew up believing that I was FAS, that I was just ashamed, so ashamed to be me. There was lots of psychological and emotional abuse in the home. And and my perspective of who I was and the world around me was just so warped by the time I left that home at 14 and went into group homes and supported independent living homes, and then into adulthood until really sobriety. Like that's really, which was only just over 6 years ago, that I started to finally just like shed a lot of these very strong limiting beliefs that I didn't realize were really like leading my entire life, the decisions that I made, like everything, right? And so through the Diamonds Mastermind, that's kind of what I do is I help the women realize, how they believe and perceive themselves in the world around them, question it, question everything. And really, I teach them how to trust their intuition more, to trust their thoughts, to trust their feelings, to let go of the things that are not, serving them anymore, resentments, these stories. Like, how can we create new, more empowering stories that that allow for the old story and now the new story to coexist together? How can we make space for that? This happened, but this equally happened so that I can now do this, right? And so, yeah, the Diamonds Mastermind is a 6-month online course for Indigenous women entrepreneurs. And I've had tremendous success with that so far. And I'm going to be launching it for non-Indigenous women entrepreneurs here. I'm going to be announcing that shortly. But yeah, I just feel like that's the process that I went on, was just realizing how, yes, I went through all of this shit. I went through all of this crap, but it was for such a strong purpose. And even those moments when I was like lying on my floor in early sobriety in my closet with the lights closed, and I was just rolled up in a ball, like crying and shaking, and for hours, like that was me. Now I understand that was such a huge part of the process. Like I needed to do that, right? And I needed to do so many things and make so many mistakes for me to be here right now doing what I'm doing.
Oh my gosh, it's so incredible. I relate so much. This is actually my closet. I turned into a podcast studio, but in that corner was where I used to cry to hide from the kids in early recovery.
Yeah.
I think I want to touch on this because it's such a big part of the Sober Business Collective is like we are anomalies. We're coming out of addiction. We're not supposed to stay sober. We're not supposed to get our lives together, statistically speaking. Like, it doesn't happen for 99% of the people that try, right? But here we are, we're standing on our own 2 feet, we're getting sober, we're changing our lives, we're becoming like members of society, helping, volunteering, raising our kids, doing these things that we're not supposed to be able to do if we look at stats. And with your story, like coming out of the foster care system, growing up Indigenous in BC, like, or in Canada, like I remember I'm 1/8 Indigenous. Yeah, I have Shuswap ancestors. And I remember my mom telling me we were Indigenous and like saying like, but don't tell anybody, don't put it on any forms, don't whatever, because banks aren't going to loan you money and people weren't going to rent you houses. And there was this like program at school for Indigenous students, and I wanted to join and like learn more about culture and stuff, but I was so scared. And when I did start opening up about it, the feedback I got at like parties with friends and stuff is like, oh, that's why you drink so much. Oh, that's, you know what I mean? And it's like the stigma was so insane. And that wasn't even that long ago. And I think we've come a long way, but there's so much further to go. And like, especially Indigenous women, like rising up, showing what you can do in this world, it is so important. And I really believe that being able to witness that in somebody else makes it possible for ourselves. Like, it's such a powerful thing. And I remember meeting you for the first time, like, you're magnetic and you've got such a presence. And I just like, you know, you see someone, you're like, oh, she's going to get it. Like, she's going to make it. You can just see it in you. And yeah, that's amazing work. Can you talk about how you kind of like found your culture and got back into that after coming out of this foster care system, and then how that impacted you building a business?
Yeah. So I it wasn't sobriety. I was just so lost. Like my husband, who was we went through addiction together. Like I was in a over 10 long relationship with like off and on with my ex, and we had 2 children together. So my oldest just graduated yesterday, and he was I think he maybe had some Micmac in him, but he was white from Nova Scotia and very old fashioned, much older than me, like exactly what I was looking for at 19 years old, somebody to take care of me. And you know, he struggled with addiction, and so uh I wanted him to change, right? Like he was always the problem. And I mean, that's just how we work as alcoholics. Everybody else's fault, right? And so I, when we finally broke up, like I had cheated on him actually, and that went so against my values that that's when I kind of went and sunk deep into addiction, like waking up in the morning and drinking, starting to do cocaine. And so for 2.5 years, things just quickly spiraled. Like I'm surprised with how fast things spiraled. Like we were like, and I met my now husband, and like very early at the start of that, and he was already an addict. And like it got to the point where I was stealing power from our neighbors because I was spending money on drugs and alcohol versus paying any of the bills. Like we were scrounging up change to go get a McDonald's burger. And so by the time I you know, hit my bottom, my husband still wasn't there yet. And he did something that was super unimaginable to me. And I we were separated for a bit. And I was so, because it was also very domestically toxic as well. And so I didn't have anybody to support me at the time. I was more alone than I had ever been. And that's when I walked into the realms of AA. But my nervous system was still so crazy and chaotic. And I was very loud on social media, and not in a good way. And somebody reached out to me because I was just adding everybody. Like I was out to like get justice at that time, right? And this was actually the period where I was saying like I experienced something similar where, you know, he was actually we had a baby, and he was keeping the baby from me. And because I didn't have anybody, like, and because I was this Indigenous woman that struggled, like, he had his family was backing him. He is very clearly like, he's Métis, but he's a ginger white guy. His family is very Dutch or Ukrainian. I'm not sure what it is, but and I had nobody. And so everybody believed him, and he was still dealing drugs. He was a drug dealer and doing drugs. And I was like, I'd never been in this place before. And so I was posting about it, trying to get justice. And and this guy reached out to me, and he's like, hey, like, do you want to go to a sweat? And at that point too, I was like, because I was already going to AA, I was like ready to just do anything, right? To just help with this feeling that I had. And, so I experienced my first sweat, and that experience is really what shifted me. Like, the medicine man had told me, like, if I didn't go there, that I probably would have died within a year. And I slept for like 3 days. Like, he was able to remove a lot of things from me. And how it works what he teaches is that, like, when he removes something from us, he's removing the root, because it goes back to those limiting beliefs, right? Where like there's a core memory, there's a core trauma. And from that, all of these experiences, like branches, are formed, right? And then it creates all of these experiences in our lives. And so what he does is he removes it right at the root. And so again, my first ever experience, I'm pretty sure I made it through all the rounds. Or no, yeah, I think I did. And I slept for days. And I kept going back. And and I didn't realize like that my culture was like that, right? Because I was just getting to spirituality. I was just believing in God. I was just believing that in a higher power, and forming a relationship with my higher power. And so I got to experience that, and I got to keep going back. And then within a year of my sobriety, I was randomly asked by somebody else to help with the Indigenous Youth Conference to plan an Indigenous fashion show. And so I didn't know what I was doing, but I did it. And I remember watching the fashion show, the music, the Indigenous models. Like, I'd never seen anything like it before. And so this was 2019. And I thought, like, this, I was so proud, right? I was so proud. And I was like, this is something that cannot be taken away from people. Cannot deny how beautiful this is. And if you were to see this, you would not be able to not feel something, right? And I truly believe that, like, it's the experiences that really shape us, right? We can sit, I have a business degree, I have an MBA, but I didn't find success until I did the thing, until I experienced things, until I made mistakes. And so we can have all of this knowledge, but it's the experiences and the action that really integrate the knowledge. And so that's where Indigenous Projects and Events came from. And I started doing Sundance, and I just completed my 4th year last year. My daughter's doing her 2nd year this year. That's one of my favorite ceremonies. And I've just been learning.
Mm. I love it so much. And I really know, like, especially in this community for entrepreneurs that are in recovery and coming out of like really dark times, you talked about, like, having an affair. It's very relatable. Just that guilt and that shame and that stuff that we hold from our past that can be that block to our future, right? Like, if we stay in that and we can't find a way to grow through that. And I love how you talked about creating a bridge between those two worlds. Like, yes, this happened. We don't have to deny it. We don't have to be Delulu and like pretend, that wasn't our past, but there's a way to take our past, learn from it, own it, release the shame from it, and then bridge it with this future that we want to create, and through mindset work. And so that first experience for you was through a sweat. Is that correct?
Through the sweat, yeah, especially like just more specifically in terms of like really being able to accept that piece of me, because I think me denying it and me not learning or understanding, being ashamed of it, that was really the foundation of so many things in my life up until that point, right?
So what do you think was for you like that moment where it was just like, okay, like I'm like where you felt like you could actually uh, bridge that gap of like shame and guilt and remorse and find that healing and hope and everything? Like, was it like a spiritual moment for you, or did it take time? And what are some of the tools that you learned that help you walk through that?
It's just still ongoing.
Yeah.
Um, it's still ongoing. Yeah, I think it's been just over time, right? And even today, there's times we I take for granted the evolution that's happened, right? Like going from, my husband was in drug court during our second year of sobriety. Um, he was still selling drugs in our first year of sobriety. He wasn't doing them, but he was selling them. And thankfully, he got into the drug court program. And I had already started my business degree, and we had gone to it. We had just started listening to Tony Robbins. I had just discovered him. Um, I was living in that tiny little 2-bedroom apartment with my kids. Corey wasn't in the picture, and I remember watching um, you. I am not your guru, and it just aligned with so much with like this very profound spiritual experience that I had prior to coming into sobriety, where I had like all of these downloads and these thoughts and things that never was there before, deep knowings. And so everything that Tony was saying was just like so like aligned with that, right? Like thoughts become like we create our thoughts become are creating your reality. Like that was a download that I got during the spiritual experience right before I came into sobriety. And so for him to repeat a lot of the things that I was told during that spiritual experience, we went and we met Tony, and we were able to get VIP tickets. And like, I'm not proud to say it's because, what Corey did as a profession, um, but that was like just part of the journey, part of the way here to me now doing similar work as that, as Tony Robbins, and knowing that, if it exists in the mind, that it's yours. If you can vision it, then it's already yours.
Uh, so what is your vision now, from where you're at? Like, where do you want to go? What's on your vision board, or however you vision the future?
So I want to scale. Like I really want to scale. I want to be able to continue to provide opportunities uh, for not just Indigenous people, but obviously like that's a huge focal point. Um, in terms of Indigenous projects and events, like we started as corporate event planning, and now we've moved to more towards corporate event planning, yes, and now we've moved more towards programming. And just a very short period of time, and we launched a sub brand called Ingirise. And so Ingirise is it's for Indigenous communities, it's for Indigenous peoples. Whereas my other programming, like the education package, so we have an education package where it's for schools, and we do events there. So we just did an event at Centennial Elementary School, and there was 4 different learning stations. There was a powwow station with a powwow facilitator. There was about 8 facilitators in total. Medicine picker took a group of 40 into the bush, taught them how to pick medicines. There was Indigenous games, and then there was elder storytelling. And so the school of 400 did this full day school-wide event. And so that is just one piece of this 10-month engagement program where we go in and we really provide these experiential things to support their current curriculum. It's in alignment with the leadership quality standards and the teacher quality standards that Edmonton Public Schools have. And then, and so that event went amazingly. And I remember like feeling that my ancestors were there and saying like, it starts here. Like, do you remember being in school and not knowing about residential schools? And, if we can just eliminate, because that's when the conscious biases start too, right? They start at that age. And so if we could just normalize the culture and just bring it to them, because again, there's still so much resistance on both sides. So how can we like bridge that gap and allow non-Indigenous people to be a part of this because they want to be, but there's still so much resentment and anger, and that's not what I want for me and for anybody. And so we have this education package in negotiations with our first school to implement that in 2025, 2026. And then for the Ingirise, we have a life skills program, and it's a 4-week program. And it's a huge part of the Diamonds Mastermind. So it's all the mindset stuff, like how can we identify the stories that are no longer serving us? How can we change the stories around? How can we let go? How can we forgive? How can we move forward? Why is it important to, have a good attitude? And how do we get to that point where we can continuously have a good attitude? A lot of the participants, they still struggle with addiction. They still struggle with looking you in the eye. There's so much shame on our nation. So, and I totally believe that healing starts with self. So even if we can just get the foundational knowledge and they can just walk away with some new thoughts and perspectives of how life could potentially be, then we're going to win, right? And so 4-week program, Monday to Friday, I'm launching it in June. So June in Louisville, and then in Cold Lake in September. And so I'm looking for facilitators because I don't want to facilitate it. I'm looking for Indigenous facilitators to facilitate it at the different nations. And then for Diamonds Mastermind, again, I am looking for facilitators because I'm wanting to expand and offer it to non-Indigenous women. The great thing about Ingirise is that it connects Diamonds Mastermind with Indigenous Projects and Events. And so we just did our very first pitch night where the Diamonds graduates get to pitch at this Ingirise pitch night here in Edmonton at this amazing location called Edmonton Unlimited. They have this beautiful pitching area, and it's a hybrid. So a lot of the women in the program are from out east, and so they can still pitch in front of funders, investors, capital ventures. And so it's called the Ingirise Pitch Night. So it's a part of that Ingirise sub-brand, again, for Indigenous people. I just want to continue scaling. I just want to continue building and providing opportunities and creating my own wealth, because that is a huge part of my own healing, and it's what I teach in Diamonds Mastermind, money mindset. How can we work with how the world is today, right? Like there's capitalism, there's colonialism, and how can we, it's not good. It's not great. Like, just like, racism isn't good. Like all of these things that exist, they're not good, but like, how can we switch what we're focusing on and really create change, take action to create change and meaningful change one step at a time, in a more purposeful way that feels more aligned to, our own individual experiences and an acceptance of all of that.
Mm-hmm. Money mindset is so huge. I think, yeah, I know, like I didn't grow up seeing a lot of it around. And if anybody had money, it wasn't because they did anything legal. And yeah, just trying to unlearn all that stuff and like accept having abundance is actually way harder. And I love what you're doing, because I think learning business skills and tactics and strategy and all that kind of stuff is absolutely necessary, but it does nothing if your mindset isn't right. And especially with your money mindset, like you have that thermostat that's set in your brain. I know Tony Robbins talks about this. And no matter what you get, you're always going to regulate to that thermostat. So working on your mindset and healing that story just like allows you to hold on to abundance because it keeps coming to me, but I have this like mentality that's like, hurry up and spend it before it's gone.
Me too. And so in my mind now, I'm like, okay, well, how can I just continue making more money, right? And so that's kind of where I'm at right now with the scale. And it's like, okay, well, how can I just continue to make it flow before it reaches that, like, your bank account is now empty, right? And also provide opportunities for others to make money, right? But I can't remember because I got recommendations from a friend for 2 books on money mindset, and the thing is people expect things to happen right away, and that's not how it works. Like it's like, yes, the vision always comes true, but it takes time, and also you have to become the person through the mistakes that you make, through the doing, to become that person, right? That is in alignment with the thing that we want. And so these books I read like years ago, and I think it's Get Rich, Lucky Bitch. So and then there's another one that uses the B word, but Get Rich, Lucky Bitch. If you haven't read it, you should read it. And she talks a lot about like how women specifically, like if you watch any of the movies, like all of the rich, wealthy boss women are bitches. Like every single one of them are bitches. Like think about it. Think about how many movies where like what's that what I can't even think.
Like Devil Wears Prada, or yeah.
Yes, The Devil Wears Prada, exactly like that one. Like all of them, literally the boss bitch is a bitch. She's mean. Nobody wants to be her. And how like if for us, like especially as people pleasers in recovery, like being able to say no, being able to set boundaries, being able to be like, no, like not steering off from our own plan, right? To make others feel comfortable or to, make others happy, because it is important that we're sticking to our own visions. Our paths are so much different than everybody else's. But to accept that people might think that we're bitches, people might think that we're this or we're that. And that's going to be part of the process. That's going to be part of the process, is accepting that and being okay with that.
You know what, though, too, as a recovering people pleaser, I found that even when I am my nicest, most accommodating, most like people pleasy self, people still think I'm a bitch. People still have negative ideas about me or think I'm, whatever. So it doesn't matter what I do to try and please other people. Some people are going to like me and some people aren't. So why not live a life that's authentic to you and like be a bitch, set the boundaries. I love it. I love it. Okay. I want to end off with this trend that's going around TikTok, and I'm so fascinated by it, and I want to hear everybody's opinion. So the question is, what propaganda are you not falling for?
Yeah. So what I'm not falling for is this idea that Indigenous women in general, that comes from trauma, that comes from adversity or systematic oppression, are somehow limited in how far that they can rise. The narrative says that be grateful for what you have or stay small because too much ambition is greedy or unrealistic, which is crazy. It's freaking crazy. And I'm not falling for that. I've lived through addiction, through poverty, there's, homelessness, domestic violence, systems that weren't built for me. And I've also built businesses, programs, and spaces that didn't exist before and that I was told that I couldn't do. But I wasn't willing to fall for that. I couldn't believe that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I just kept going. And if I can do it, anybody can do it. You don't need a business degree. You don't need a master's degree. You just need to believe that, like who you believe you are today, they question everything.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Honestly, I've gotten emotional so many times through this podcast, especially thinking about what you're doing in the schools with kids and just bringing culture there and allowing them to be proud of who they are, who their family is, and showing up the way you do. It's just so important because, like I said, when we see it in others, we can see it for ourselves. It makes it easier anyway to see it for ourselves. And you really are a trailblazer. And you're breaking generational patterns and poverty, and building generational wealth is one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves and for our children and for our healing, and just to make more space for people like us. So thank you for all the work you do. And how can people get a hold of you, and where can we find you?
Yeah, I do also want to say, like, I couldn't have gone here without other women, like, and for me, healing the sisterhood wound was a huge part of me getting here, and having other women teach me how to treat other women, also, because I wasn't great at that. So yes, sisterhood, amazing, and to get a hold of me, I'm Natasha Delany on Delany. People like to put an E before the Y. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. I am the Natasha Delany on Instagram. And then if you want to book anything for the education program, or any First Nations are wanting to book the Ingirise Life Skills program, it is www.indigenousprojectevents.com.
Incredible. Thank you so much.